Good evening. Welcome to the Monday, May 10th Muscatine Community School District Board of Education meeting. Madam Secretary, would you take roll and determine a quorum, please?
My pleasure. Director Cooney?
Here.
DeVete?
Here.
Draba?
Here.
Here.
McCarter?
Here.
Morgan?
Here.
Sure.
Here.
All members are present.
Thank you. When COVID started, or shortly before, in pandemic times, we began doing we did a lot of things virtually. And one of the things that we've also been able to do is bring in students to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, which is much more fun than having we adults lead the Pledge of Allegiance. So tonight, virtually, we have the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the Franklin Student Leadership Team. So I would ask all of you that are here if you would stand and join me, and we're going to let the team lead us. I've decided there are some things in our world that now I've deemed COVID keepers that we've learned to do, and to me that feels like a COVID keeper. So it's a great way to involve our students and be able to bring them into the meeting. So thank you to our friends at Franklin who led us this evening. Our next agenda item is our public hearing. This is to amend the FY21 budget. Madam Secretary, I will do a motion to open the public hearing. I was all excited to do the roll call vote, but I need a motion first.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to open for the public hearing. Madam Secretary, would you now do a roll call vote for me?
Aye.
Director Cooney? Was that an aye?
Yeah.
DeVete?
Aye.
Draba?
Aye.
Finn?
Aye.
McCarter?
Aye.
Morgan?
Aye.
Sure.
Aye.
All ayes.
Okay. So we are now in a public forum for the amendment of the FY21 budget. Is there anyone who would like to address the board on this topic? Okay. Lisa or Tom, not sure who to ask. Did we receive any sort of comments or written or oral regarding our amendment?
No, we have not.
Okay. Does the board have any questions regarding the public hearing portion? We will actually approve this a little bit later in the meeting, so this is just our piece to really receive public comment. Okay. Hearing none, I would then entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Mike, was that you?
Yes.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded then to close the public hearing. Madam Secretary, would you do a roll call vote, please?
Director Cooney?
Aye.
DeVete?
Aye.
Draba?
Aye.
Finn?
Aye.
McCarter?
Aye.
Morgan?
Aye.
Sure.
Aye.
All ayes.
Thank you. And the public hearing is now closed. That takes us to our agenda item, which says that it's School Board Recognition Month. And the theme is leading through uncharted waters.
Yeah, so we just want to take an opportunity to thank all of you as board members. This is part of the Iowa Association of School Board, their theme for School Board Recognition Month of leading through uncharted waters. And just on behalf of the district and our community, I want to say thanks for all that you do. Even as I think back to our work a few weeks ago on our strategic planning, the conversation of the community really doesn't understand all that you do and the amount of time you put in for no compensation, and how you're not a council, but you are a board, and the governance behind that. And along that theme of leading through uncharted waters, very appropriate, certainly this year or the past 18 months. And the challenge in doing that is you really at that point have to follow the stars and that true north. And the thing I'm most proud of with this board, and really with this district from the classroom, but certainly all the way up to this board, you specifically always follow that true north, which is doing what's best for kids. And you always put that first and foremost. And when you do that, you will always see your way through challenges. So thank you for your support, your leadership, and guidance as we've moved through some really challenging times as a district and as a country and the whole world. So thank you, and just want to, again, extend our appreciation on behalf of the district and the community. And I believe you each have a certificate as well.
Thank you for that. The next item on our agenda is, Dylan, you're up. I'm guessing that you're going to do the student report out, yes?
Yes.
Yeah, you can say no if you really want to, but
I don't have a lot, so it'll be quick. So firstly, we successfully held prom and CAPE just a few weeks ago. Talking with students, they had a blast, and I think it was really good to be able to hold that with still being COVID safe. So thank you to Mr. Christopher and Mr. Hankinson as well for being able to work those details out. And then the only other thing I have is we are moving towards the end of the year. Last week, this week, and next week, a lot of students have AP tests, so anyone watching, good luck. And then moving forward, we also have finals, so the end of the year is approaching very fast, and I think students are really eager to get to summer.
what's the countdown, Dylan? How many days are left?
I believe it's 13 school days, if I'm correct.
There he is. And he even said he believes. He didn't jump at it's exactly. Good for you. Well, we wish you luck in these next few weeks as you finish, whether it's AP or finals. And I think everyone can agree it's been a long year.
Yes.
It has been a long year. And thank you to Student Council and to your peers as well for the work that went into both prom and CAPE, especially for those seniors who said, it's my one and only senior prom. So to be able to get to participate and safely, and whoever was in charge of ordering the weather did a fabulous job as well, because the weather was pretty darn perfect to be outside. The next item then on our agenda is our Citizen Speaks portion of the agenda. If we have anyone in the audience that would like to address the board, now is the opportunity to do that. We would ask that you step over to the podium, and if you would just state your name and address for our board secretary so she can capture it, and feel free to pull that mic to where it's convenient for you, but so that our audience members at home can hear you as well. We do limit your comments to 3 minutes, and please know that we appreciate hearing from you, but the board is not able to engage in conversation at this time.
Thank you. My name is Sandy Stanley, and I live at 918 Acorn Lane in Muscatine. I'm here today speaking on behalf of Clean Air Muscatine, or CLAM, who is advocating for renewable energy in Muscatine. I know you heard from Jean Clark at the last school board meeting advocating for solar on the roofs of Muscatine schools. CLAM understands that adding solar to the roofs of Muscatine School District, the schools and the buildings would be significant savings for the school district on their utility bills and help the environment. As schools are closed for periods of time throughout the year, the school district could sell their excess energy and turn a bigger profit, thus earning money for other school use. Solar rooftops have the added benefit of teaching students about the importance of the environment and emerging opportunities in the field of renewables. It will give students hands-on experience with the technology and help offset some energy costs. Web-based software to monitor the energy output and savings will be integrated with the array. Several schools in Iowa are placing solar on their school rooftops and other school buildings. I'm going to give you 2 examples. In Marcus, Iowa, 2 schools have placed solar panels on their roofs, saving the district money and freeing up funds for schools' other needs. One of the challenges for schools is being able to find enough general fund dollars to run the school as effectively as possible, and we think by saving energy costs that would then allow us to be able to do things that would more greatly benefit kids than just paying for utilities. And that was by the superintendent of the schools. Then another example is the Iowa Falls School Board hoped to save money with the installation of solar panels on the district buildings. After the first full year of operation, the board learned about their savings. The board received its first annual solar energy report. The panels were installed on the district's 4 school buildings and bus barn in the fall of 2016. So for the period November 2016 through October 2017, during that process, the installers felt that they would save about $35,000 a year, but they actually saved $59,250, and we're talking about 4 or 5 years ago. CLAM hopes the school district would seriously consider solar roofs for the area's school buildings. The benefits are multiple. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board during Citizen Speaks? Okay. That takes us to our board targets and goals report. Those items are: students will graduate prepared for post-secondary options. Muscatine schools will utilize resources effectively and equitably, and students will learn in a positive and supportive environment. On item B, number 1, you'll notice there's a note that we're going to start that piece at 7:45. That's a timing opportunity we have. That's going to be via Zoom. So we're going to skip that piece, and we're going to go to item C, and we'll do the Muskie Return to Learn update, and we'll start with that. Okay, I'm just going to kind of give you a little bit of background and about our first topic, which is Muskie Connect. This year, we put a district kindergarten through 6th grade committee together that consisted of teachers, nurses, counselors, and administrators to focus on a way to connect our families to school. This committee put a lot of hours in working together as teams and gathering feedback from colleagues. Tonight we have Kelly Peterson, who's a 2nd grade teacher at McKinley, and Laura McDonald, who's a 5th grade teacher at Mulberry, to share what the teachers are proposing for the upcoming school year.
Good evening, and Kelly and I would both like to thank the board as well for all the hard work that you've done this year, especially considering this may go down as the toughest public school year in history. So we thank you for all of your support and all that you've done for our school district. My name is Laura McDonald, and I teach 5th grade at Mulberry Elementary.
I'm Kelly Peterson, and I teach 2nd grade at McKinley Elementary.
And we are here to share our district's exciting opening to the upcoming school year for elementary students called Muskie Connect. Every school year, our district has held some sort of Meet the Teachers type of event, whether that's been an open house for families to come in and meet the teacher and see the classroom, or in the form of Muskie visits in recent years, with teachers and staff going and visiting families inside their homes. And while both types of events have provided opportunities for families and Muskie staff to get to know each other, next year we plan to take our feedback and combine the best of both of those worlds into an event called Muskie Connect, which will take place in our elementary buildings. The purpose of Muskie Connect is to establish positive relationships and communication by strengthening partnerships throughout our school community. Many individuals within our district have helped plan this event, including teachers and administrators. Feedback from Muskie families and staff helped frame what Muskie Connect should look like in order to best meet the needs of all stakeholders. All Muskie staff members were invited to attend the roundtable planning discussions, and we are now working together as a smaller cohort to finalize the logistics of this event.
we will be holding these 2 days on the first 2 days of the school year. Monday, we decided to start at 10 and go till 7 to accommodate our parents who work during the regular school hours. And then we'll meet Tuesday, 8 to 5. And we're planning to have each family come in for a half an hour in each classroom. And it'll take place at all the elementaries. And everybody K-6 is invited to come. Our plan is that they will be there 30 minutes to meet the teacher. But the great thing about this is all staff will be in attendance. So each building is going to be allowed to, like, if they want to come up with a theme or something so that it can involve, like, our reading teachers, the food service people, and all our parents. Since so many parents have missed being in the building, some buildings have done some new renovating, like for McKinley instance. We got our new building 2 weeks last year before we were shut down. So a lot of parents would still like to come in and see that. So as the parents come in, we will greet the student and have some one-on-one time with each family. We're hoping to do a real informal assessment in both math and reading, mostly just to get a feel for how our kids have done. Yes, we have data from the spring, but we're so excited, which you're going to hear later, how many kids have signed up for our summer school academy. And so we're hoping to see a lot of growth from that. It's just basically, like it says, a snapshot. Also, we are hoping to, that day, to connect our parents with Class Dojo. So it has been the most effective communication for all our parents. Everybody knows what's going on, and it's really helped. Also, we can give expectations on our schedule. And also, as I said earlier, parents can meet with the nurse if there's any concerns, counselors, or any other staff in the school. Does anyone have any questions?
I'll ask one. So you said 10 to 7 on Monday, I think, for the parents that work. Is that too, if it's after 5, is that 2-hour time slot enough at 30 minutes apiece to get the?
Well, we've kind of talked about that, and we don't know. We're kind of hoping, as in the past when we've scheduled home visits, that we can accommodate all parents. I truly believe that most parents or most teachers professionally will try to accommodate anybody that they can, just because it's important for all of us to make that connection. And which I want to thank you for these grade level meetings this year, because that's been a great place where we've gotten to talk and discuss things. But we thought about making 2 of them, but we're worried about the parents, since the next day on Tuesday is the next first day of school, and being later for our kids, and they want to get routine. So we haven't really.
Yeah, we might just have to, this first year, if we have to adjust. The other thing we did talk about a little bit too is just some flexibility for teachers. But I think after this first time, if we need to adjust times for next year, or, like Kelly said, if some teachers, want to flex some time, usually we're flexible with making that happen. So
Hoping that by them getting to schedule their own time, it'll work for the families.
I'd like to say more of a comment, as in thank you for the work that you're putting into it. And you're very correct when you say the connective part of it, because we've been, in a manner of speaking, disconnected this past year, especially being able to have that one-on-one with the kids and the parents and everything. So it will be interesting to see how we're able to take and make this work for the coming year.
Very true. And I also think like in my grade level, we just talked about parents I teach second grade, so parents really want to be in and see what's going on. So I think, one, that first getting to see this class before it even starts, your classroom, I loved home visits, so I really missed that this year. I just think, and more people in my second grade cohort also said too, just that comfortableness for the students, lesson anxiety. Now, Laura can have a different perspective since she's got the older kids.
No, I totally agree. I think we as teachers, and I could probably speak for most families in saying that we're so excited to think about getting to a place where we can all be in the building together again, where we can actually shake hands with our parents, where we can actually, give our students a hug when they come in the door. So this is something, after the year that we've had, looking forward to this Muskie Connect event, I think is just going to be a fabulous way to kick off the year in a positive direction and saying, we're back, We made it. Here we go. Let's have a great year.
Did I miss it? How are you communicating this? Because obviously we're going through the summer. What's that look like? Because I'm getting home visits. You have a lot of, I'd say, control. You can be intentional in going just to make sure we get all these parents. I would like to think they would be there after everything. They haven't been in the building.
So one of the things that the committee is currently working on is an information flyer that will go out to all families with not just information about the event, but how they can get in and sign up for a time for the classrooms they want to visit.
So all of the principals, when we met, what they're going to do is at each building, they'll schedule families, giving them their choice of what works for them. And so what we'll work a little bit on that in the spring, then we'll send out reminders right before the event, and then of course follow up with phone calls and so forth. So.
And I guess for any parent listening, we will try to do like we do conferences since back to back. So like if Laura's got a 5th grader, she wouldn't come at 8 o'clock in the morning, and then her 2nd grader come at 2. We'd try to, get it 8 to 8:30, 8:30 to 9.
You also mentioned that this is K through 6. Is there something different or need of for our middle school and high school?
They have back to, I forget what the actual term is, but where the
New
freshmen
Muskie
come
Day.
in. New Muskie Day, yeah. So they accommodate like the freshmen, and I don't know if they do 7th grade because this is the first year for it, so do we do that?
Yeah, the junior high is actually looking at having an open house type event for families. And then we do have New Muskie Day for our freshmen and then our incoming 7th graders.
All right, thank you.
Well, I would like to thank you too, but I do have a quick question. Are you planning to have that Muskie Connect, let's say, again in the spring? Or is it just the plan right now is once a year, which is in August, let's say, or when they go back?
This would be the way we would begin our year in place of an open house or Muskie visits. We're kind of combining that into one event, into one. So this would be a beginning of the year event, but we would still have our conferences as usual in the fall and the spring as well.
Okay, thank you.
I just have a couple of questions. With what's the test gonna look like? And do you have any kind of concern that you're starting your relationship with a student as you're giving them a test? I'm thinking about kids that might have some anxiety. How do we minimize that? The second question that I would have with it, or I don't know if it's a third maybe. What does, oh wait, I lost my spot. Go ahead and answer that one, I'll figure out what I was trying to say.
We decided, like kindergarten is doing like a craft thing that's gonna cover what they wanna look at just to see where they are. 1 through 6, it's a 1-minute reading probe, and then like 2nd grade, we're doing a math game.
Yeah.
And it's more geared toward just having some one-on-one time with that student, just to kind of visit and talk and kind of celebrate where they are after the summer, because we do have so many students that are attending the Summer Spark, which is exciting. It's not a stressful, we're grading you on this kind of thing. So
An activity, I would say too, our activities are differentiated. I think all of the teachers spent quite a bit of time making sure that it wasn't just an on grade level little pass. They have some that are below, some that are above. And they tried to make, as much as they could, like I think 1 grade level is doing like caterpillars. And so it's a activity based more than a test.
Okay. What about the parents that don't make it that night? Because I think that when you had the home visits, we tried to have 100% participation. We always try to have 100% participation, but what happens to the parents, or how do we reach out and connect with the parents that aren't able to attend that night?
Kelly, will you really pull that mic close to you? I'm sorry, it's so they are at home that they can hear. Yeah, thank you.
We have also talked, which we're in the process, our little group that's talking, trying to get transportation available so that's not a problem for families. We're also looking at, since we have so many support staff and things, trying to provide some kind of childcare, hoping that won't be deter them from coming. I think most of us, when we talked in our grade level, we just talked about just really talking about how important it is. And if they can't, like, I would just let them meet me. I mean, I don't care about the test as much as meeting them. Say, hey, if I understand you're busy, you're not here, you want to come Wednesday after school, Tuesday or before, I would say, hopefully they're professional and will encourage the parent.
I can't think of any teacher that would not be willing to be, as flexible as need be to accommodate all of the families. Our goal as well is to see 100% of the families and make that as available to them as possible.
Is there some alone time? So who's administering or who's taking care of the, for lack of a better word, test?
We, the classroom
All right.
teacher.
So is there a time that you'll have a time to meet with the parents without the kids? Because I can tell, I just know from a lot of times parents are comfortable. They just, when is a time for a parent to say, here's what I really want for my kid for this year? They suffer from some anxiety. They suffer from, here's how you can really help them. Because sometimes they don't want their kid in the room. At least that's been my personal experience,
would
is that
say
you have better conversations sometimes without the kid in the room.
Right, with those extra personnel, I think we can utilize those. Or, like in my room, I was thinking like, okay, here's the stuff that they have. They can go explore the room, because it'll be just their family and the child in my room. It won't be any other parents, any other students. So I feel like at a home visit, they'd usually go play. If I'd say,
Right.
parents, do you have anything? They'd go play, and I'd just talk. That's kind of how I envisioned it.
And I would say, too, in the past, like with back to school night, we would have, 10 to parents in a room at a time. And sometimes parents were trying to have that conversation with the teacher, and it wasn't private, or the teacher would get caught with one parent wasn't able to meet the other. So I think this is an attempt to give that one-on-one time for every family. And I would also add that every teacher is available, to call parents. They meet with them on planning. They have class dojo. I mean, there's lots of ways to contact the parent as well, or the teacher and parent. So,
Well, Kelly and Laura, I really do appreciate the work that you guys have done and that your committee has done, and I'm looking forward to it. I think this will be a very good step forward. I hope everybody understands, again, it's the first time and it won't be perfect. It's never perfect. We just want to try to get better each time, right? So I'm not trying to grill you right now because I know it's going to be good and we'll get better. So
Well, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
And I would just add, I've had the opportunity to go through this process in a previous district, and I can't think of a better year to move forward with this, because we're going to have a lot of kids that show up we haven't seen for a long time, and to be able to assess them right away and begin that process of intervening and supporting them. Also, we are, and great questions here, we're going to need to track, whether that time was sufficient and the amount of, the percentage of parents that weren't able to make it, and see, well, there's going to be adjustments along the way, for sure. But again, prior to this, the feedback from parents and from staff was overwhelmingly positive, because they don't have that back to school night where there's just tons of people. You really don't get to meet the kids. Kids are more comfortable. Teachers are more comfortable day one. It changes the classroom environment on that first day compared to previous years. So it will be a really positive thing. And I just appreciate all the work that the committee has put into this to make this as good as possible. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Clint, no, it's good for you guys. I'm not going to put you on the spot, but I will make a comment that right now our calendar has 4 days at the end of the school year that I'm not sure how we're going to use those. I personally would be open to starting the year with half days, because I think that might accommodate some of the stuff that we have with our parents later on too, that would feed right into this. So again, I know that's probably more of a management thing, but something to think about. We got time at the end of the year that maybe we could shift to the beginning of the year. So,
Okay.
Thank you, Kelly and Laura.
teachers.
Any other questions around Muskie Connect?
okay. So the next thing I was going to cover is just give you a quick update on our current kindergarten enrollment. So as of May 7th, we have about 287 students that we are projecting or enrolled for kindergarten. I thought it might be interesting to look at the past few years and where we were at this time for enrollment. So in 2000, students going into the 2020 school year, we had 280 at this time. Coming into the 2021 school year, we had 305. So we're sitting at about 287 right now. And I know a little bit later, we're going to be talking more about the enrollment analysis. And so some of this information will play into what we hear about later. And then just last, before Mr. Hoganson speaks, I wanted to give you an update on summer school. We're pretty excited. We are planning to serve around 550 students this summer in our summer program. I think the numbers are incredible, not only in regards to the amount of students that we have, but just the amount of staff we have that are willing to teach. I do meet with other districts often, and almost every district is having a difficult time finding even a few teachers to teach summer programming, and therefore having a really hard time getting their summer programs up and going. So I feel that just speaks to the dedication of our teachers to have that many teachers signed up to teach, and then that many students that have signed up as well. We have some pretty exciting things I wanted to just share briefly. We have been pretty excited about planning for this summer because we have so many community partners that are willing to partner with us in making learning more engaging for students. Some of our community partners, I just wanted to share the Y, the Musser Public Library, Muscatine County Extension, H&I, Musco, Kent, Stanley Center, MCC, and Bear. So we have, and the Art Center. So we have all of these community programs who have been working. Kim Warren has been leading that up through AIM and has done a fabulous job, and Troy Cooland has also been putting in a lot of time. Candy Still and Corey Spees have been heading this up with administrators, as well as Chris Nienhaus, Jennifer Lee, Terry Hoganson, and Stacy Orr. So summer school for elementary will be June 28th through July 30th, Monday through Friday from 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock, and we have 420 students signed up at the elementary level. At Susan Clark and the high school, their programs will run June 14th through July 2nd, Monday through Thursday. And we're going to start a little bit later to let our older kids sleep in a little bit. We know that's important, from 9 to 1. They have about 80 students identified at Susan Clark, and quite a few, about around 40-ish per level at the high school. So again, just really excited about our summer programming, and we will have more to report to you after that finishes, so you can have some information on that. So at this time, if you don't have any questions about summer school, I'll let Terry come up and share some information regarding the high school.
Well, Terry's coming up. I will just add, it's wonderful to have so many community partners. I'm so grateful for those in our community who continually, time after time, offer ways to help the district. And it takes a village, but I'm grateful we have such great community partners. So. And I appreciate Kim's work with that, to pull that together.
Yeah, she's done great. And we even have some junior high and high school kids who are volunteering to help out with our elementary students. And so it's just been a really nice community, support to put that together.
All right. Hello, everyone. I just guess I want to say at some point, I didn't know if May would ever get here. And now that it's here, it is crunch time. So we are going to get through that. I also want to thank you, Dylan, for all that you've not only been as a participant on the board, but also for the feedback that you give, even for like how prom was. So deeply appreciate that. Thank you, sir. I will just going to get through a couple of the end of the year things that we're focusing on as we're going to roll through the very end of this month. We have the awards assembly, which is coming up this Thursday, and we've broken that into grade level sections to kind of reduce numbers and those kinds of things. And so we will be celebrating everything from silver cord to everything else at that time as they're coming through. Tristan Toll, which is another blessing to our district, basically came up this morning and says, hey, think we can stream that? And I said, sure. So I think this will be a nice add-in too, so that people that aren't able to attend in person will be able to have that streamed in and be able to see that. So we're excited about that opportunity. So that is this Thursday during the day. The next big item will be scholarship night, which will be on May 19th, and we'll go from 6:30 till 8:30. There are going to be limiting numbers, so it's not going to be as fill the place. We wish it could be that way, but 113 students at this point are being invited that will receive some sort of scholarship or recognition that night. So we're excited again about that opportunity to celebrate our students that achieve and are going to move on to bigger and better things in life, those kinds of things also. And then there's something called graduation that's going to be coming up here. And so that is on the 23rd, and we have information that's been going out. We will be making the call on the Wednesday before graduation, whether it will be outside or inside. We will start off as an outside graduation unless the weather looks inclement, and it doesn't look like it's going to be a beautiful day. I'm kind of hoping that we get a prom day repeat so that we can kind of have that outside. It's just a nice venue for that. Same schedule-ish kind of thing, even though it'll be on Sunday earlier in the day. It's going to be that same kind of setup for that. Students will be sitting on the track, and we will be doing that if it's in that. If there is inclement weather, we are going to move it inside to the gymnasium. Last year would have been sort of a drive-through process where we would have gone through on stage. Because of the conditions that we're under and the precautions and how successful this year has been in so many ways, we feel very comfortable in being able to say that it can be in the gym if necessary. The 4 tokens will be 2 per family, so we will be limiting numbers regardless of either venue. But if it's inside, that helps us even more because then it kind of keeps us with the ability to keep things, going in a safe kind of way. So those are the things that are kind of coming up fast, and we're excited about celebrating students in various ways. And you received your mask, a token that will be going out. That's a sample of that is the tokens. The mask that we'll be using, the bad news with it is that is your only mask. So if somehow between now and then you lose it, well, we might be able to find 1 or 2 more. But that's so we prefer that this is the mask that you wear to the graduation. And then there should be a parking pass in there also, so that you can be close enough by so that you're not trying to fight traffic to get there to represent the board. So, are there any questions about anything dealing with the end of the year?
How do the tokens work? Are you having people drop them in a bucket on the way in? I mean, how do you know?
It was like we were kind of up on the front part. As they were coming in, they handed the tokens in, and that's the way we were able to kind of monitor numbers and make sure.
Will you be live streaming?
Yes, there is. We are working with Chris Anderson, who's been really good to try and figure out how to make this work. The thing is that we're going to have is that we'd love to be able to have people sing in person like play like the orchestra or the choir or a chorus, but it doesn't look like that's going to be able to be possible this year yet. So they are going to video record themselves, but because it's during the daytime, it's going to wash out. So what's going to happen is we're going to have it audio played during the graduation ceremony, but if you watch it on TV, or if you stream it, you'll actually see the performance. So it's going to be a little disconnect from that, but then as you get to actually reviewing it later, if you want to look through it, or as it's being played on the airwaves, they will see it as if it was more in person. Good question.
And then I just want to mention this to you before I forget. if you would be interested in having a conversation about changing, being able to decorate your cap for graduation. I don't know if you would be interested in having a conversation about that moving forward.
Sure, we could converse about anything, Dylan. So we could, I'd be more than happy to sit down and talk with you, the other board members, student board members, and talk with them about what the wishes are and what they're thinking. Not going to make any assurances at this point until we get through the conversation, and then we can see where it takes us.
See, Terry, last year we had a little bit of a bottleneck at the end of they took pictures really close to where they ended when they got their diploma and came off the stage. Is there anything in the plans to kind of move that away so it's not so much of a bottleneck there or not?
Very observant, yes, we noticed that also. We had one photographer, and it was fairly close. We're going to be moving it down a little further, and there's 2 photographers.
Super.
So we're hoping that between those 2 things, that it will speed things up and we won't bottleneck as much and have them backed up like we did last year.
All right.
Good catch, though. We noticed that too.
On a separate topic, Mr. Hoganson, the summer school, is that separate from any type of component recovery that might need to take place?
We're seeing those as one and the same at this point, so they will be able to receive that. Well, that's part of the trying to entice them to kind of come in. We're also talking about different avenues to provide like other kinds of credits, like an elective credits and things like this to try and help in that case.
Okay, I just saw the June 14th and I didn't know if that was too late or if it was separate from it, so
Yeah.
it's a start date. Okay.
Any other questions?
You have at least 2 of us who are extremely excited for graduation this year. Not that we all aren't excited, but sometimes you have reasons to be even more excited, so.
And I think maybe we could have a mutual understanding on shaking hands or maybe other two as those certain individuals come through too, so we'll see how that works out.
I'm probably gonna hug, so.
I really wasn't gonna ask permission either.
I kind of
but-
thought so.
I took a selfie last year, so.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, Terry. Don't anyone lose your packet between now and May, the end of May. Toby, you want me to hold yours for you, or are you good? All right, are we close enough to 7:45, or do you want to give it, we're good to go. All right. Are you okay if we jump back to
Yeah.
that? Are we good? All right, so we're gonna jump back to item B. Muscatine schools will utilize resources effectively and equitably. This takes us to the RSP report on enrollment trends.
And we're going to have Robert here with RSP to walk us through this presentation, answer some questions. And I just want to, again, part of the rationale for having this study done is to give us a much better idea of what our enrollment looks like moving forward. As you know, that will impact budgets, staffing, our facility usage. And about a month ago or so, when we had our joint meeting with the county and the city around housing, you're going to see some connections to that conversation as well. So I think there'll be a lot of really good information here. And again, that helps set the stage for future decisions as we will be needing to make those coming up.
Great. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. And are you able to see the visual up on your screen?
Yes.
Outstanding. Well, good evening. Rob Schwartz, RSP and Associates, owner of the company. You probably saw this presentation and said, oh my gosh, there's 40 slides. We're going to be here if he comes on at 7:45 till 10. Well, I only will be here with you at 10 o'clock if you have questions. So don't worry about that. I really have the idea of hitting 100,000 foot view perspective, and then we'll drill down into some of these nuances, much like the superintendent indicated, things you've probably already heard. And I'll try to give you some takeaways that will help you understand why we say enrollments potentially will do what we're forecasting, but what are some of those factors to look at? So this is really my first time talking to you as a board and to probably many in the community that are going to watch this. And what you need to know is RSP, we've been in business almost 20 years, and we exclusively work with school districts. We do a lot of work in Iowa. That's how you heard about us, and that's why we're doing the work that we're presenting to you this evening. We really enjoy doing this type of work. We like trying to gather the data, figure out the challenges, and then ultimately create what I would call intel, your projections on how we think things will look over the next 5 years. And so this page will get into some of those expectations. Anyone that reads this, they need to look at this. This will help guide you on why we're saying what we're saying or why we're saying what we're saying. But the bottom part of this, there was a lot of data that we collected locally from the school district, the county, the city. We used census data. It was pretty limited still at this point. Other data sets that we utilize to help us understand what happens in your district. So really want to thank them. Without that information, we would have some incomplete consistencies in our analysis. So here's the page you want to take out, rip it out, put this on your mirror when you go home. This is the 100,000 foot view. This is what you ultimately have paid for. And the first component is enrollments. And we're indicating that your enrollment will decrease over the next 5 years. Now I'll talk you through some of those talking points, because I think at some point when we were talking with administration, they thought maybe we would at least hold steady, maybe have some slight increases. So we'll talk to you why we're saying that it will likely decrease. But we do have what I refer to as a pig in the snake effect. So I'm a farm boy by heart, grew up on a farm. You think about a snake eating a pig. We have, as that snake's digesting that pig, we have different size enrollment that would be the pig, that as they move their way through, start to impact what your capacity might be in buildings. So is it too much or is it too little? Capacity piece, Window District is working on what that capacity might look like in your buildings. What we left them as a talking point is more getting at what the education or functional capacity is. And so that will impact, when you match this up to our projections, how full or not full a building might be. So this is another layer to the analysis that will be very beneficial to the district. And then developments. We know there's some building activity that's happening. We know some of it is related to those that would probably be for older than 55 years old. May not have specific parameters on that, but the type of housing product might lead toward that type of demographic. We'll show you some visuals of what that looks like. The next series of pages give you some of those visuals. So we tried to do an inset on, I believe, almost all of the lower right-hand corners of the maps. And so you can see how horizontal your district is laid out, if you were not familiar. And like every school district in Iowa, the purple line makes absolutely no sense. Goes back to those 1960s unification days of how those boundaries were created. In this particular map, the solid color where we're zoomed in is Muscatine. So that's the city limits. You'll see the existing elementary attendance boundaries. And then from that, we created these planning areas, and there's about 150 of them. And we break it down smaller than census blocks because of the data sets that we can get from your community. We can statistically understand at those 150 areas what's happening with developments, what's happening with enrollments, what could be happening with demographics. So it's a way that we can build a foundation to a statistical forecast model. I'll come back to that. If we look in a little bit greater detail by Grant Elementary, I'm gonna turn on my pointer. So here's Grant Elementary. You can see that we have an aerial that's laid into this map. You can faintly see some gray lines. Those are parcels. The dots represent students. The larger the dot, the greater the grade that student was in. So we can see there's some dots that there's multiple dots on top of dots. Well, that household has multiple children. I show you this map so you can see how all these data layers are playing together. You know, the stuff that we get from the county, the city, the school district data. That ultimately leads to these 150 planning areas, a way that we statistically, through regression, try to forecast what enrollment will be over the next 5 years. This is more than just saying, hey, from first to second grade, we traditionally grow by 2% or 3% or we decrease. This is uniquely looking at the housing inventory. So we're looking at variables of what is the age of the housing inventory, what is the value of the housing inventory. If I could put the condition of the housing inventory, I would love to add that. We were not able to do that in your district, but it just gives you the ability to understand how we're looking at the way things were, the way they are, and the way they could be in the future. You're going to see some maps that I will show you that get into what I call a subdivision life cycle. All I want you to take from this page, this is just math, and it's high-end math to try to help you get at what a reasonable projection might be. Some of the data sets that we use are listed here. Again, you can look that over. I just want you to see the robustness of what's happening in your district. So I'm going to take a little moment to talk about birth information. So when we spoke with administration, we said, here's the start of some conversations that tell us a story, at least one variable, that we will see an enrollment decrease. And when we look here in the column of the number of live births in Muscatine County, we can see that in past years, we had a lot of live births, and this is the address is tied to an address that's in the county. And so we can see the number of live births, and look at this last year in 2020, 431 live births. That's the lowest, right? Terrible for number of live births. We come back up to 2015. When I come down to the column of number of kindergartners, this is the number of kindergartners that we had that particular school year. So this school year, we have 305. Well, we kind of throw this year out a little bit because with COVID, there may be families that chose, hey, we just don't feel safe sending our kids to kindergarten this year. So we're going to maybe redshirt them. We'll do something different. And so then the question is with that choice in future years, specifically next year, do they come back as a kindergartner or a first grader? So that's a question that we tried to answer in our analysis. But then what I'm showing you here is in the blue font, what a potential number of kindergartners we could see 5 years over the next actually 4 years from 2016 to 2019. So you can see the range from 270 to about 340 kindergartners. This low number of live births, this is a concerning factor for our look at your forecast. So you want to come back to this page to understand that. All right, so then if we look at this data here, the enrollment by grade, this starts to give us a picture of the number of kids in each grade starting in 2011-12 through 2021. We look at those right-hand two columns with that red font, that means we lost students. So this is not new to you. You know that you've been losing students. What's painful this year is this 165, right? We have to go all the way back to 15-16 to have a year where we saw that much of a decrease. Another way of looking at this data is what we would call cohort. So how does enrollment change over time as they go from 3rd to 4th grade or 8th to 9th grade? And so a couple things that kind of stand out with this analysis is this year, again, you can tell that COVID definitely had an impact on your enrollment. And we see that because when you look at 1920 to 2021 row, you can see that, look at the decreases in all of the grades, except for 9th to 10th. So obviously there's something that's a little bit different this year. We do have other years where we've seen decreases, like when we look at the previous year. But again, this is, we said fewer kindergarten or fewer live births, and then we have some cohort changes that tend to be negative. I don't know what the reasons are for that. Some of them could be economic. Some of them could be all sorts of reasons. Could be that we get less out of district kids, right? But we're seeing this in the data. And so we had to factor that in. We did look at migration. So we look at it two different ways. This first map is in migration. So who's new to the district that were not receiving services the previous year? So when we look at the bullet points down here, you can see that we've ranged from this year being the lowest number of new students, 226, to other years of almost 290 new students. So the dots represent where those kids are. Again, we're zoomed out at such an extent. There's probably multiple kids in that household that might be a middle school student or an elementary student. But again, so we usually have more than 200 new students. Out-migration. Come on. Apologize for this technical difficulty. There we go. Out-migration. So when I look at out-migration, one of the things that we're focusing here is students that were receiving services, but no longer receiving services the following school year. So we had fewer new students. A good sign is we had fewer students that left the district than what we've seen in the previous 3 years. But unfortunately, with some of the other things that if you go back to the table, we go back to this table here. Another thing that we look at is the number of students that are seniors, and then how many incoming kindergarten students do we have the following year. So as we have this pig in the snake effect, with some of the larger grades being in the secondary, as they move through, if we have fewer live births, meaning we likely will have fewer kindergartners 5 years later, and the large classes graduate, we have to make up the difference. Well, it's been kind of smaller. Last year was 336 seniors, and this year with 305 kindergartners, we only lost, 30 kids, 31 kids. When we start having some of these larger classes, if the kindergarten number doesn't rebound back to, let's say, 370, the decline could be even worse than what we're forecasting. And just as you look at the data, I think this might be a map. Okay, here we go. So here's a visual with the mapping analysis that gives you an understanding that these planning areas change over time. And so if you just focus in one particular area, you'll notice it's green, then it's orange, maybe it's a dark orange, then a darker green. That's just that subdivision life cycle of how we see the housing inventory change. And then the households that come into your district, do they have school-age children? Are they elementary age, middle school age, high school? So again, just a visual that you can see, it changes every year. That's why we have this sophisticated forecast model. If I look at some of the other data sets where we geocoded the students, this map here shows where the greatest concentration of students are. So we look along 8th Street with this dark red. This is where we have the greatest number of students residing in your district. Again, just another visual, where are the kids at? How does it relate to some of the geography in your community? We did look at elementary intra-transfers, so students that live in your district and making a choice to go to a different elementary school other than the one that they would be assigned to based on their residence. And so the dots represent, those are the kids where we're seeing that happen. This table illustrates where that's occurring and how that's working. So let me talk you through this table. So this first column is reside. So we know the attendance boundary, and so which of these elementary buildings do they reside in? And then as we move to the right, which one are they actually attending? And so if we just focus on Franklin Elementary, obviously for the students with intra-transfers, there's going to be 0 there, right? Because they're already at that building. So we know 17 that reside in Franklin go to Grant, 29 to Jefferson, 28 to Madison, 35 to McKinley, and then 17 to Mulberry. That gives you 126 that are choosing to go to one of the other elementary buildings other than where they reside. If I follow that Franklin column all the way down, we have 40 kids. You can see the breakdown, 3 from Grant, 22 from Jefferson, 4 from Madison, 9 from McKinley, and then 2 from Mulberry that are saying, hey, we don't want to be at our building of Grant, Jefferson, or whatnot. We want to be at Franklin. And so the difference of this 126 and 40 says we have a net migration out from Franklin to one of the other elementary buildings. So again, just a way that you can see that one of the positive things, you do have a little bit of school choice that's happening. I don't know the reasons. Some of this is programs. Some of this could be babysitting. Some of this could be just who their cohort friends are, right? So this is just, again, looking at the data. I won't read all these bullet points. You heard me basically say all of this in my explanation as I try to move through some of the visuals. If we move into development, I do look at some baseline data to try to understand, hey, are we going to see something new? And if we see something new, how does that translate into number of students that we might experience having in the system over the projection time period? So the blue line represents the certificate of occupancies. So how many buildings are being built? And when the building permits are issued, it's different than the COs. The building permit, they start construction, the CO, the people can move actually into that unit. So we see it's above 0. There's been some building activity. We look at the graphic here with the table. You can see this last year we had quite a bit of activity. You go back to 17, 18. Again, a lot of units came online for your community. The green line represents the census data previous to the 2020 data, right? So we're waiting for that to come out at a better, more granular level. But with the data sets we look at, it's below 0. So it's indicating that there's fewer people living in your district than there were the previous year. The red line represents the change in enrollment. So what we're trying to understand here is, okay, we have some building activity, but we're still seeing fewer people live in your community, and the enrollment's changing, but the enrollment's changing at nothing similar to what we're seeing for population or for building activity. So what in the world does this mean? Well, what it means is we have a demographic that is moving maybe into your community, and they either don't have, or there's a delay when we finally see school-age children. So again, just trying to understand the data. What does this mean, and why are we saying there's an enrollment decrease? Well, there's fewer people living in your community based on census data. We have fewer live births. We have negative cohort change, grade to grade, as a general rule. I don't know why I'm delaying moving my slides. Try to do something here to free up some of my resources. All right, there we go. So as we look at the planning areas, we're able to look at the planning areas, whether it's single family or multifamily, and we can see what we're generating for K-6 students in this case from 2011 through 2020. I know we can't get 0.26 kids when we look at this district average here in 2011. Think about this: if there were 100 single family units, we would get 26 K through 6 students in 2011 as a district average. And then here in 2020, it's dropped to 20 K-6 students for every 100 single family units. You can see that breakdown by each of your existing attendance areas at the elementary level. So we can see there's a little bit of difference. When I look at Jefferson, we have quite a bit higher yield rate than what we get at Mulberry for number of students with single family. If we look at the same thing with multifamily, fewer students are generated. So we're down to 14 for every 100 multifamily units. And we define multifamily basically everything that's not single family. So if it's mobile homes, townhomes, row houses, duplexes, apartments, it's multifamily. So you can see it's actually increased a little bit, where we're at 15 K-6 students for every 100 multifamily units. And again, you can see that breakdown for each of the elementaries. And in this case, you can see Madison has and Mulberry have the least generation of students for that type of housing inventory. We do look at the median home value based on the assessor data. Blue represents the most affordable, oranges and reds represent the least affordable. So again, just giving a visual of how that relates down to that parcel level. We focused on where we're seeing building activity. So the dots represent where those units came online. This ties back to that graphic earlier where you could see it by year. The legend shows those same number of units. When we started with the incomplete data for 2021, we have 2 units that were built at the time of this map. From the information that we received from the city, which was really helpful for us just to understand what's happening in this community and what can we expect, we put expectations of where we potentially could see development based on our planning areas. And so when I look at this 91 up here where my laser pointer is, that's not 91 kids, it's just planning area 91. And obviously the concentration is going to be where the infrastructure is available, where the lots have been platted, but we have a larger geographic context that relates to this particular area. Yellow represents something that we may see in the next 5 years. Purple probably more out towards 10 years. We even looked at the comprehensive plan. We looked at some really cool concepts of building on to the ports down here so that you can become have greater connectivity to be what I would call like an intermodal location for goods to come in and be transported different places. I mean, there's some exciting plans that the community is looking for happening. But again, we have some limitations with the competition of other area places that may be trying to do the same thing. I think it was Machiavelli said that all cities are at war with each other. Very true when we think about economic viability. We also look at future land use. This helps guide us when you go back to how we developed where growth areas are. The city has a plan for their future land use. We were really focusing on yellow areas and orange areas because that's where residential occurs. That's where we could potentially yield students. Again, just trying to give you an understanding of all the data sets that we looked at. So we know there's some building activity. I can't say enough about this housing tax abatement the city has. This is a really good project. It'll be like house by house where there's an abatement that could help some of the blighted areas in the historic district. So that will help provide better affordable housing product in some of the areas where the condition of those housing units maybe are at the point where we need some of these dollars to invest in. We also noted from our conversations with the city that these lofts, whether it's the Colorado senior lofts, the Grandview senior lofts, they're probably going to be probably more towards an older age demographic. And so we shouldn't yield really students out of those. So I think they're meeting a need for what the community probably has asked for, but we're not having a lot of housing inventory that's going to generate where we would see new kids. That gets us to the enrollment projections. And so this graphic illustrates a breakdown of the elementary. So current and past is the primary red. The middle school is the primary blue. And then the high school is this Kelly green. And then the aggregate is the purple line. So you can see visually coming all the way back to 2013 and 14, we've been seeing some decreases that occur. And you can see a much more extreme decrease, again, the one from 16-17 to 17-18, now here from 19-20 to 20-21. So a question that as we were going through the analysis, we're like, are we seeing a trend where every 4 years you potentially could see a dip similar to what we saw this year and similar to what we saw from 16-17 to 17-18. So can't say anything definitively other than when we look at the enrollments, we look at live births, we think there's some things that are going to push our enrollments in different directions. Why I go back to this pig and the snake effect. So if we look at what naturally will occur is if we have smaller grades, as they start to work their way through the system, we start to have fewer students in the high school. We have fewer students in the middle school, but what we are thinking starts to happen at the elementary is we start to see more kids. And some of this gets into that subdivision life cycle that we're seeing and how we were saying, yeah, there's something more than live birth data. Our model's not exclusively driven by live birth data. It's influenced. And I think that's important because there's other modeling techniques that would say, hey, just look at live birth data and here's where it is. And I think there's more to it than that. We drill a little bit differently into some of the data in more of a spreadsheet format. I'm going to talk about what you see here on page 34 as we work through that information. So on this page, you see each of the elementaries listed. And I put what grades were in the buildings, really focusing, I believe, on 1920, right? And then as we move forward with 1819 to 2021, we show the past enrollments based 3 different ways. Reside, because remember we have the elementary attendance boundary, so we know where they reside and do they reside in that boundary. So those are the number of kids that reside. When we look at the early childhood, they're all going to be the same because they're district-wide. The boundary is the district. So if I look at Franklin, here in 2021, we had 347 students. So that's the middle row, blue fonts. We then have a subset of reside, the top row for each building. It's reside/attends, purple fonts, and they reside and actually attend that building. So if we look at Franklin, we have 347 that reside there, 221 that resided and attended that building. When we look at the bottom row, the green font attends, that's the number of students that actually were attending based on the student data that we received. So we had a field in there that said, here's the building they're at. So the true change when I look at Franklin, we have 347 this year that resided there. Only 221 of the 347 resided and attended. But then we have, remember I said that student pickup, net migration, 40 kids. That's how we got that 261. So they grew 40 kids from that reside attend. Then as we move through our projections for the next 5 years, we show it 2 ways. One, if everyone goes to that building based on where that boundary is assigned. And then 2, looking at the trends that we were seeing with school choice, how does that maybe look for students in seats in the next 5 years? This could change greatly. So the green row, trying to give you something that you can understand what that trend may look like over the next 5 years. You move a program or there's differences in how a household may want to make that choice, and that could be very different. So the better way to look at the projections is really the reside because we have all of our variables really honed in on that forecast. We show you the same thing for the middle school. Again, I show you the previous middle school not to bring up bad memories or maybe good memories of the building, but bad memories because it's offline, but just to have a apple-to-apple comparison with the district totals of where kids were going to school in previous years. And so you can see that not having that district on or that school online, you have the right enrollments for what's happening in that building, what's happening in your district. I mean, when you have the capacities that are laid into this, that will more definitively make that statement that I just made either true or false, because capacity is kind of a tricky situation because based on the programming, how you look at that programming, how you use your space, may make it look fuller or may make it look less full based on how you're using those buildings. In the bottom row here, bottom rows, that just shows you the change year to year. So you can see how things progress at each of the levels and at the district level, whether it's an aggregate number or a percentage. All right, that's a lot of me talking. Hopefully I was able to give you what administration was hoping, this 100,000 foot view and understanding of how we looked at some of these data points to say, hey, I wish I was reporting you're growing. Honestly, most districts in Iowa are actually decreasing. There's definitely definitely a minority that are seeing increases. And even if I throw out the COVID year, because that's kind of a year lost with some of the data, what we did try to do with your forecasts, with this instructional modality bullet points, tried to say, we think some of these kids that maybe chose not to be in your district receiving services, they may still be here and they may come back in the next school year. Now, it's a little bit less stronger correlation, a little bit stronger indicator in your model versus, let's say, the WAKI model that we built for this year, because you already had years in the past where you've lost students in particular grades. So I couldn't make as strong a correlation in our modeling to a choice related to COVID. But is there questions, comments, things that maybe were not clear in how I explained this or the visuals we put in the presentation?
It's more as a comment that I think, Clint, you mentioned that this will tie into some of our conversations we've had with the city, as in what to look at projection. And I see where it talked about, of course, we've done some more senior housing. And so what does that mean for what we need to do in the future for the family housing and such? And then where to put that, so to make sure what that's doing with our schools and school structures. Is that correct?
Yeah, so good point, Karen. And even as we went through that, some of the pieces on the tax rebate programs for housing, all of that ties in, because when you look at the capture rate of those single-family homes versus multifamily homes, we get more students out of that. So looking at programs, that would encourage that. Also looking again at that heat map of where are those kids at. They're down in along that Jefferson area where a lot of those older homes are. How do we turn those over and bring more families into that area? And it's through some of that abatement program. So some of the things as they're looking at their housing plan directly tie to the decisions that we make. So when they're looking for our feedback, this helps shape some of that feedback to them as well.
Has this been presented anything to the city itself on this information, or?
This has not, no. So, Rob's presented to our leadership team and now to you tonight.
And if you noticed in the back and what I am showing up on your screen are some secret pages. They're not secret in that they tell you something other than how do you compare with some of the census data sets from the perspective of you, the school district. When you see the page I have up here right now, how do you relate to some of, let's say, the regional school districts in your area, the city, the county, and then the state of Iowa? So some of this stuff is all core to what the city's looking at. I know they're like every community. We're trying to figure out how do you provide ample housing. From the school district perspective, we're focused on basically age 5 to 18. The city's focused on 0 to death, and that sometimes creates some challenges. And where right now, when you look at some of the housing that's coming online, it's definitely a demand, a need for some of the older population to have that type of housing inventory. And so if they have the ability for you guys to provide comments on having other housing options, things that we're seeing in other Iowa districts, maybe some different multifamily opportunities that provide something that the Gen Zs and millennials, what they may be looking for. They may not want a house. They may not want the maintenance related to that, but they may still end up having kids and they want to live something where it's, again, less work on that particular housing.
I would also point out, just as you're thinking of all this information, as you look at some of the things we've talked about in terms of marketing and what we're really trying to push, that early childhood, getting kids into the system, the more that we can get them into the system, the more likely they're going to stay with us. And then based on some of these enrollment projections, we see some of those changes as they impact the high school. How do we continue to promote and market the great things that are happening at our high school? Again, to bring more people in and also keep our capture rate as high as possible. So it really does start to bookend and align with some of the work we're doing there as well.
As you know, that I have a background in housing, working for HUD programs for many years. And so your comments about, especially in the Jefferson area and the older housing market, it's something that I talked about for quite a long period of time. And what does rehab mean, to that area? Part of it means that maybe some of the older population that's in that area, now that there is other housing, they will be able to go out to some of that other housing, which leaves those older homes potentially for some families in which to be able to receive. And then I noticed that there is something that the city's giving some discount isn't probably the proper wording, but some help for folks that are taking and doing rehabbing of homes in certain areas. Yep. Are they still doing that one?
Yeah, so that would be part of that tax rebate for those type of projects in that certain area or certain neighborhoods as they've identified that. Yep. Yeah, and I think, again, you see aging in place in a lot of communities. And really it speaks to, Muscatine as a community. People, they live here, they raise their families, it's a great place to live. They don't want to go anywhere else. They've been in that house for a long time, they don't want to move. And so, again, as we're continuing to try to grow as a community, and Karen, you're right, if those other housing opportunities allow some people to move, stay within the community, that opens up some other opportunities as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything else on this topic? There's a lot of content here.
And we'll continue to work with Rob. One of the pieces that we are still working on is that capacity piece, so we can push that in there. Again, that starts to look at some of our staffing issues, and this will tie into our facility study, right? So as we look long-term at where enrollment is, where our staffing is, it all starts to fit together.
Okay. Rob, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you. I'll see you guys sometime when I'm passing through, because it's a great community. I've enjoyed it.
All right. Our next agenda item, as we continue to jump around just a little bit, is to come back to letter C, item 2, the strategic planning workshop overview.
So it's been a couple of weeks, about 2.5 weeks, since we've had Dennis Cheeseborough with TeamWorks International. And I just want to do some quick follow-up so you kind of know what's next and where we're headed from here. So I have followed up, as we talked about a little bit that last Thursday night with Dennis, to look at some opportunity in June or July to have him come back in. So you have at your spot a little packet just of some of the information that was put together. It's still draft. We're still working through it, but you can see some more of the finalized pieces that were put together. And on this first page that talks about the district strategic roadmap draft, the mission, vision, and core values are what we currently have in place. And I think it would be important to bring him back in and just renew that and go through that process with us as a board, with our leadership team. Again, as we think about the connection to the daily desired experience, does that all align? It's also an opportunity to have Dennis come back and just work through in a little more detail the implementation plan with us as we spend some time on that this summer. So tomorrow, our administrative team meets, all of our principals, assistant principals, directors, and this will be the first time we've had a chance to all get back together after that work. So we're going to spend some time, again, reviewing those daily desired experiences, and you can see that, excuse me, is on your second page for what we hope students feel, families feel, and staff feel. So we're going to spend some time talking about that. I'll talk a minute about next steps with that as well. We also, in the process of those days, one of the area that we focused on for next year was core instructional practices. So we're going to start spending some time tomorrow really starting to define that and build that out as a leadership team, which also fits really well this past week. We were in 4 different buildings as part of our instructional rounds. We've done a little over half of those. We have a few more to do. So now as an administrative leadership team, we've been at multiple levels in a lot of different classrooms. So we can, as we frame this conversation of core instructional practices, we see it through a lens of how it can look and how we've seen it look from early childhood all the way up to high school. And so we'll continue to build that out and develop that implementation plan. And then the next thing, going back to that desired daily experience, we need to get some feedback on that. We need to get feedback from our students, from our staff, and from our parents. So taking that, those statements, kind of building them out into a survey that we can send out to say, you know, how strongly do you agree with these statements? Is there anything that we're missing? So we can finalize that work as well. And again, continuing to work with Dennis on finalizing that implementation plan and pulling that all together. That starts to define professional development opportunities. I mean, it's all built into that system. And then certainly the board work plan that aligns to that in terms of what we're bringing to you, what we're monitoring through that process, and the information that we'll get in front of the board. So really the next critical steps is for us as an administrative team to spend a little more time digging into the details on that, really breaking down and identifying those core instructional practices, and then getting into the daily desired experiences that we can get some feedback from those groups, get that finalized, come back, we'll work with Dennis on that mission, vision, and core values, and just kind of solidify all those pieces as we move into next year. So, questions or comments about that?
Clint, I think I spoke with you a little bit about this, but with the daily, the desired daily experience, I guess my biggest worry with it would be that we're trying to lead the conversation instead of just seeking information. I think that if we try to get too specific with too big of a survey, I don't know that people will do it. But I think the simpler the better. You know, what's a positive thing about your day? What's a negative thing about your day? You know, maybe 3 or 4 open-ended questions, because I think sometimes we get to, do you like apple pie or cherry pie? Well, maybe I don't like pie, right? So I think if we try to get too specific and we try to lead the questions to where we want to find an answer, instead of just saying, do you like dessert or do you want something after, do you eat after your, what do you eat? What do you eat, sweets? I don't know. But I think the simpler the better. And I think open-ended, I know it's tough to put all that back together, to group it, but I think that might give us the best information. Because if it comes down to the kids really just want to have better food at lunch, you know, that was the example that Dennis Cheeseborough gave us, right? Then maybe that's what we need to focus on. So,
yeah, I think we had that conversation with Dennis too, and I think what he said, and as you look through those, I don't know that there's any that we've already developed that people are going to say, well, that's a terrible, you know, we're talking about being seen, valued, and respected, engaged in the process, you know, all those types of things. So we have to be careful that we don't spend too much time wordsmithing everything. And it's an ongoing process, and we're going to continue to put this in front of people. We're going to continue to talk about that, and I'm sure it's going to change as we move forward. So, you know, it's really getting more input into the process, getting it moving forward. And again, what is it that we hope every student feels, staff member feels, and families feel every day in this district? So we'll have some of those open-ended pieces. And then eventually, as you can see, and conversation with Dennis as well, and what other districts have done with this, this very easily translates into an annual kind of climate survey of how we're doing, are we making an impact in those areas.
Any other questions on that topic? A lot of good content there. Thank you to everybody who contributed in those specific areas tonight. The next part of our agenda is our action or possible action items. The following items are considered to be routine by the Board of Education and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a director so requests, in which the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence. Those items are minutes, bills and claims, employment recommendations, special education contracts, student teaching agreements, nursing agreement with Trinity Public Health, and memorandum MOA with EICC MCC for concurrent enrollment, interfund transfer for COVID-19 expenses, driver's education contract with the AEA 9, which is for 2022-2023. There's the general fund student fee schedule, which is for next year, 2021-22. And then the third and final reading on policies. There are a lot of pieces there. What are the wishes of the board?
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda.
And is there a second?
Second.
And Toby, thank you. It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. And just like that, we just perused through half of the agenda. That takes us to the next item, which is to approve the tentative MHS class of 2021 graduates. And Aaron, I'm going to look right at you. Is the other parent on the board who has a child? Would you like to move?
Conflict of interest, right? I can move. If so, I will make a motion to approve.
And is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the tentative MHS class of 2021 graduates. Is there any discussion? This is probably one of the second most favorite things as a parent that we get to do, is to, when your student's name is on the list, one, we're glad that they're on the list, and two, to be able to approve. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. The next item is to approve amending the FY21 budget. Tom, I'm going to look to you on that one.
Okay, so nothing has changed since last month when this was on the agenda, but we're asking, based on the board report and projecting what I call my working line item budget, that we will need to amend our current year budget. And so that's what this process will do. And, you know, we're required to amend our budget if we may exceed one of those four functional categories. So please note that the changes in the estimates do not increase taxes to be paid in the current fiscal year ending June 30th, 21. So it's just being used by reserves or obviously grants that we are getting this year that we didn't know about last April. So.
What are the wishes of the board?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve amending the FY21 budget. Tom, you know I always like to ask you, it's not a good thing if we don't do this.
Correct. It's not a good thing.
Like, I don't look good in orange, it's not a good thing.
Well, it's not that bad if we don't. I mean, sorry, it's not dire, but.
But it is important.
It'll eliminate a comment in our audit report too, which would be a little cleaner, so.
And if you foresee that there's going to be a change, it is important that we make that amendment first.
That is correct.
Right.
We have to do it before we expend or overspend.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on amending the FY21 budget?
Just as you noted, Tom, that all of these are due to COVID-related expenditures
Right.
and income that came in, so we had to.
Correct.
All those in favor of amending the FY21 budget, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries.
Thank you.
The next agenda item is to approve awarding the contract for construction to Bill Bruce Builders, Inc. in the amount of $849,500. This is for the MHS Stadium project, Phase 2, which is just the turf field. And I see Ryan is on the move to the podium. So I'm guessing he either has more information for us or he is just here to field any questions. Field any questions? Did you see what I did there? Field any questions that you might have.
Very punny. Yes, it's simply if any of you guys have questions, I'll be happy to answer them tonight.
Do they have a start date?
May 24th. So May 24th is when we will be starting on the stadium demolition. So then the turf will come after the stadium is demolished.
And then the last piece, Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, is refinishing the track surface after that. So it'll be the last thing.
The one advantage that this gives us is Bill Bruce is also the stadium bid winner. So we have one contractor doing the stadium and the turf, which makes it much easier to coordinate between that and then the track overlay.
Just the completion date?
Completion date, so substantial completion on the turf is July 26th.
23rd.
Sorry, 23rd.
It says the 23rd?
Going off memory, sorry, Mike.
Any chance I get to correct you, I'm going to.
Anytime. and the product is Sprint Turf. For those of you, I'm not sure if that's in the documents, but Sprint Turf is the product that they'll be putting on the field. It's the same product that was used at Kingston Stadium and then the new Iowa City Liberty turf field.
Does that include in the past there was a concussion pad that had
So,
gone underneath that?
so all the research is going away from concussion pads.
Okay.
And we also elected not to do the extra height, extra fill. There's no performance advantage to that.
Okay.
A little bit more maintenance increase as well.
Any other questions for Ryan?
Is there any progress on the video board at all?
I think Clint probably has more information.
Yeah,
than
I know
do,
they've been meeting on that. I do think we've made some progress, but we'll save that for a future meeting because I know some of that, I think they had a meeting today.
Okay.
So I don't have an official update for you, but some pieces to work out, but I think we're moving in the right direction there as well.
I appreciate the fact that construction can start the day after graduation. Because I know, and we talked about this last year, and when the contract was signed, the conversation was it would need to start before. So, and especially given the pandemic, and that all worked out beautifully. So, however the stars aligned, I am incredibly grateful for that. So, all right, if there are no questions, I would entertain a motion to approve awarding the contract.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the contract with Bill Bruce Builders in the amount of $849,500 for the stadium project, which is that covers the turf field. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you, Ryan. The next item on our agenda is for the Musco Vision proposal. This is to add cameras to the MHS gym, the Carver Pool, and the football stadium, as well as the Van Heck Center. That would be in the amount of $41,000. And Clint, I think you have some additional content for us on that.
So I'll talk through this a little bit. Tony also has been involved in this and can answer some questions. So, essentially Musco, several years ago, developed some cameras, some streaming cameras that can be mounted on the wall or on light poles, which obviously they install a lot of light poles. So it's some pieces that they've been putting together and putting throughout the country. So we've been in conversations with them, and again, given what we've seen over the last 18 months and more streaming of events, the importance of this has continued to grow. We've been very fortunate. We've done a lot of streaming of some of our major events, but the other thing we heard through this year was, well, can you stream the freshman basketball game at the Van Heck Center, the JV game, and what about the pool? And there's other areas as well. So how do we look at this more comprehensively? Again, enter our work with one of our local partners here and Musco Lighting to look at this. So again, those cameras go on light poles or on the wall. That's why we're looking at the gym at the high school, 2 at the Van Heck Center, 1 at the pool, and then at the football stadium as well. Essentially, in that unit is a camera. That camera works essentially with an artificial intelligence. So based on the game that's being played, it learns how to track movement. So it will pan left and right as the action goes. There's also a microphone that's kind of built into that system. It really isn't necessarily for capturing what the ref says, during the game, but it will pick up some of the ambient noise around that. So again, I think as we look at this proposal, it does provide a need moving forward for streaming of events, a variety of events in a variety of locations. There's also, so basically the video stream is fed through a system that people will pay to stream that, and many systems, as we know, have continued to, we continue to do more streaming of different things in our own home. So the price would be similar to paying for a ticket to enter a game, right? The district, so I think the price for a streaming of an event is about $7. $5 of that stays with the district, and $2 of that goes to Musco. Again, the advantage for us in that is that our activities fund has taken a significant hit over the last 18 months and allows us to help rebuild some of that. And it also has an opportunity to, it's not just, the people here in this community. It could be, you might have people from Clinton who don't want to drive down and can stream our events that way. Again, we've also seen that usage of families who aren't living in the community can also pick up those events. So because of that streaming approach, being able to social distance and the environment we're in now, we can leverage our ESSER funds to pay for that. So it doesn't come out of our general fund dollars here. And so we think that's a good advantage and an opportunity for us to put these cameras in and get those up and operational. The other thing that Tony's been working on, we can still work with Discover Muscatine to do streaming of our major events where they would still use their cameras, their commentators, and we can push that through that paywall system as well. So Tony's been working with them to continue those conversations. Again, for those major events, wouldn't be any different from what you're doing now, except you'd pay through that streaming service that we would for the other events. So with that, we're asking for approval of that proposal for the cameras in the amount of $41,000.
Did I hear correctly that there's a conversation also going about with the baseball, softball areas?
Yeah, so the areas that we have put in the proposal are the ones that we own and have control over. More conversation needs to happen for our soccer field, our softball and baseball field. That's city-owned. So it's just a little more complicated in getting that done and how we would revenue share and what that would all look like. So more conversation on that to come.
Good.
Are the advertising dollars, I'm assuming that there's going to be advertising dollars tied to this. Has there been a discussion on, is that going to be 100% the activities department, or is that going to be through Discover Muscatine, or does it go through Musco, or?
That would depend on, so again, when we're streaming, we've got to separate what we've done, in the past with Discover Muscatine with those major events. For, again, for that JV basketball game, Mr. Olsis or somebody at the high school or Tony basically sets the camera. It's going to turn on at this time. This is the game. This is the event. People go in and pay for that stream, right? There's no advertising. They're going to watch the game, okay? So then as we look at how we function with Discover Muscatine, those are the conversations that we're having. Discover Muscatine has sold advertising in the past. Obviously, they have also then paid us for some of that advertising. We're also now generating dollars because of that. So those are things we'll continue to work through with Discover Muscatine. The bottom line is we're still going to be generating dollars for the activity fund at the high school because of the streaming system.
Yeah, I just know from personally and being tied to the athletic department for the last 30 years that those advertising dollars have shifted away from, because it was, at one point it was just programs, and almost all the programs that were sold, whether it was a spring, fall, summer, posters, all those advertising dollars were at the high school level, and now they've moved away from that. So now there's a very small part of that, and the programs generate. Our community has so many dollars to spend. It's a finite number. So how they decide to spend them and who gets that is really concerning.
We mentioned this was going to come out of ESSER funds, so correct me if I'm wrong, but just kind of to share, because we're all used to that term, but elementary, secondary school emergency relief fund. Did I get the acronym right? So one-time dollars that come to us that we are to be using specifically for things that have been impacted by the pandemic. Is that a fair way to say that?
I'd say there's a variety of ways to spend that, closing achievement gaps. And we'll talk more about some of those ESSER dollars because it's a significant amount of money that we'll have to spend over the next 2 years. But there are things that we have to be very intentional with and very careful not to, when you're paying for staff, when you pay for staff with short-term funding, what happens in year 3, what happens in year 4. So there's a lot of conversations that still need to happen. But we will be back to the board in June to talk more about those ESSER dollars. But again, this would be a part of.
But this would be a prime example of a way to use some of those funds that don't necessarily need, as you said, year 2, year 3, et cetera, funding.
Yep. And I think this is an opportunity. If we didn't have ESSER dollars, would we be doing all of these cameras? Probably not. We'd start a lot smaller and build out from there. But because we have that opportunity right now, it's a good time for us to get the infrastructure in place and be able to move forward.
I think it's a great opportunity for us to promote our athletic events or events that happen at these facilities, and I really commend you for approaching this.
Any other questions on this? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the Musco Vision proposal.
Okay. Second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the Musco Vision proposal, which will add cameras to the MHS gym, Carver Pool, football stadium, and 2 at the Van Heck Center in the amount of $41,000. Are they able to do that yet this year? I don't remember reading that. Yes, Tony's shaking his head yes.
Yeah, I believe that will start.
Tomorrow? Maybe
tomorrow.
not tomorrow. All right, but yet this year. All right, awesome. Any other discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. The next item on our agenda is to approve transferring funds that are held by the Muscatine Community School District for the Bernadette and Paul Railing and the Eileen Railing Scholarship to the Community Foundation of Greater Muscatine. Tom, you look like you're primed and ready to talk about that.
I can try to summarize the two documents that were presented in the board book. So this goes back before I came here years ago. I believe these scholarships were transferred from the school foundation to the school district for whatever reasons. And as you know, in the last few years, the school foundation is dissolved and all the scholarships were moved to the community foundation because they can better handle those scholarships. So through the help of the community foundation and community bank, where these scholarships were held, we are able to transfer that to the community foundation as well, because of now in Fund 81, which is our scholarship trust fund. So I'm sure you've all noticed on the depository balance, what makes up that 136,000? Well, a majority of that are these two scholarships. So we can transfer them there where they can handle the investment of it, and then we will communicate out to the high school and the past recipients where they need to go to get their scholarship. So we're kind of cleaning up that scholarship trust fund and getting all the scholarships to the community foundation.
What are the wishes of the board?
I'll make a motion to approve.
A second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve transferring the funds that currently sit with the Muscatine Community School District for the two scholarships of Bernadette and Paul Railing and Eileen Railing to the Community Foundation. So truly just a sheer transfer of dollars. For those that have ever attended the scholarship evening that's held in May, these are, multiple of these are the scholarships that have been awarded through the years. And Mike, I don't know how far back in your history you remember, but these have been around for a long time. So
They
an
have.
incredible gift to students and have sent many on to further their education.
They've helped a lot of muskies.
They have. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor, the motion on the floor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries.
Thank you.
Tom, thank you for helping be a good steward of those funds and moving those to the foundation for us. The next items are discussion and information items. Item A is the first reading on changes to a couple of one policy and two regulations. So 703.1 purchasing and bidding. Then there's 703.1R1 suspension and debarment of vendors and contractors procedure. That is new, as well as 703.1R2 using federal funds in procurement of contracts. So please, you'll see those two more times. If you'll read those, and if you have any comments or questions and want to send those to our board secretary, Lisa can gather those and handle those appropriately. Then Tom, that takes us to March financials.
Sure. So tonight, I have the March financials, and the first document is our agenda to keep in front of us on financial things that need to come to the board. And then March reconciliations you'll see in front of you as compared, and the cash balance is compared to the prior month. Our fund financial summaries across all funds just is a comparison of our fund balance at the end of March compared to March of 2020. And then here's that expenses to published budget as of March 31st. And I'll continue to present this and show the published amended budget here when we start presenting May. So, and then the two general fund reports in more detail, the revenues and expenditures, and I don't have any other comments. We're, on budget or percentage where we are compared to last year, we're in a good place. So no red flags to talk about.
I like it when you don't have any red flags, Tom. I like that.
So.
I appreciate that first page that lists all of our dates and kind of what targets we need to be looking at. We'll work all those into our strategic plan when we are kind of plugging those dates in that we talked about so that we know when we need to think about renewing
the voter PEPAL
Thank
and
you.
Instructional support levy and
right, or
revenue
public
purpose
hearings or,
statements, public
yeah.
hearings, yes.
That'll be perfect
Okay.
place for that, to keep that front and center
Okay.
for everybody. Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions for Tom? All right. That takes us to our announcements for the evening. So here's our list of upcoming things. This is always a busy but exciting time of year. The Riverbend Mobile Food Bank will be at the Administration Center, 2900 Mulberry, tomorrow. So that's on Tuesday, May 11th, from 4:30 to 6. May 12th will be an early dismissal for staff professional development. So that's a 2-hour early dismissal. For our seniors, May 19th is their last day of school. And May 23rd, the class of 2021 will graduate. That will be 2 p.m. at the MHS Stadium. And again, students they will have tokens to provide to that. As much as we would love to open that up to the whole world, we're still going to adhere to our guidelines in public places. Then May 26th is the last day for PK students. The 27th is the last day for kindergarten through grade 11, and there's a 2-hour early dismissal that day. And May 27th, there will be a district retirement celebration, so we'll have an opportunity to celebrate all of our wonderful retirees through the district. That'll be from 4 to 6 p.m., and that's at the Rendezvous. We have Memorial Day on May 31st, and then that takes us, my friends, into June. And the next time we will all be together for a board meeting is June 14th. We'll be here at City Hall. Are there any other announcements for the good of the cause? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thought you're all going to leave me hanging. And is there a second?
I'll second.
And all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you so much.